Good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode 14 of the Techcitement podcast. I'm Yoni Gross.
I'm Alan Weinberg.
And this is the most excited podcast in the world of tech. We've got some entertaining news for you tonight. We're going to be talking about some of the latest news in the Aereo case, Amazon's unlimited book service, the right to be forgotten in Europe, which I think is going to let Europe be forgotten, and some other entertaining stories for the evening. Now, our guest this evening is actually going to start us off with the first story because I'm having a little trouble with our show notes at the moment. So, Alan, give us an intro.
All right, so we're starting with Aereo, I assume?
Yes.
All right, so Aereo, after the Supreme Court case saying that it is a public service.
Well, they actually basically got told that they're a cable company.
Yes, they are. Well, that's the point of contention in the story. They said, well, if we're being told we are a cable company, and the broadcasters have to license their broadcast to the cable companies, there are a lot of debate on price, but they must license their broadcasts. Then, hey, give us your broadcasts. We'll talk about price. And the letter companies, ABC, Fox, NBC, those fun guys, are like, well, no, you're not a cable company. You're like a cable company. So you don't have any of the advantages, but you have all the disadvantages.
Yeah, it's sort of a bizarre swing in this case. The Supreme Court had actually sent the case back down to a lower court, and Aereo is trying to change the rules of the game in the middle, basically, and instead of going with their original argument where they wouldn't have to pay any licensing fees, they're going to offer to pay licensing fees and not get into a debate with the broadcasters about what sort of damages they owe or anything like that. They're just trying to move on with the subject. And the broadcasters are like, we're not letting you move on with the subject. We want this court case to finish. It's a very strange and confusing situation. But I got to say, props to the chutzpah, Aereo. It takes some real guts to sit there saying, we're not a cable company, we're not a cable company, we're not a cable company. And as soon as someone says you're a cable company, say, fine, then we'd like all the advantages of a cable company, please. It was a very rapid turnaround from a company that we thought we had heard the last of.
Right.
But it looks like they're trying to keep their doors open eventually. They've shut down the service for now, but we may see them come back yet.
Right, and of course, the broadcaster is saying that it's a brand new defense that has never been pled, much less litigated, which was their quote, is an issue because, as courts have ruled before, that if you bring in a motion too late into the case, they have been known to shut that out, even if it is a valid argument.
Yeah, so it's going to be an interesting couple of months for Aereo. We'll see where they get with this. Now, on the other side of this argument, Dish Network with their Hopper DVR service had some worries briefly there for a while. Fox was bringing the Aereo case as evidence against Dish, but it looks like the DVR service, which is not really addressed in the Aereo case, is still okay. It's just the live broadcasting that got Aereo into trouble. So there's no injunction against Dish for their Hopper DVR. That case is going to continue along the same path that it was on before, and we'll see where that ends up.
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea of, I don't understand why it would be that much of a difference, honestly. I mean, one's live, one's a DVR, but it is a single service to a single customer, just as before, but...
Well, the theory goes like this, that this entire case hinges on the definition of a public performance. Now, it's not a huge stretch to say that if you are sending a live broadcast to many people, it doesn't really matter where you got that live broadcast from. You're sending the same live broadcast to all these different people. And so that's a public performance. But a recording where you have a separate recording for each customer, and they're controlling it separately, and they're doing it at different times, and there's no real relationship between these two things, the fact that it comes from a single company does not necessarily make it a public performance all by itself. I think there is some room to distinguish between the live broadcast and the DVR service. It just sounds really strange because one company was doing both of them in very similar ways.
No, listen, if Dish can argue it, good for them, because the Hopper, while I do not have Dish, seems like a good service.
Yeah. Well, the Hopper is a great concept, but it requires you to have satellite for your television. And having experienced that, it's a terrible plan.
Yeah.
I don't know who thought satellite was a good idea. Satellite's a terrible idea. For all those of you who have small children and want television when it's raining out to entertain your kids when they can't go outside and play, satellite TV goes down when it's raining out. And so they can't watch TV or go out and play. It's a terrible combination.
Yeah. Well.
Now, in what I thought was the cheeriest news of the week, Congress did something last week. It's very unusual lately, and not only did they do something, they did something unequivocally good.
For the tech industry.
Yeah, I was truly astonished. For those of you who were paying attention to the Librarian of Congress a year and a half ago, so me, there was a ruling that cell phone unlocking was a violation of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. The DMCA has become famous for its overly broad implications on the technology world. And one of those implications is that if you bypass any technology designed to protect the copyright, that is a violation of DMCA in and of itself, just bypassing those copy protection technologies. You know, like cracking the encryption on a Blu-ray, or, for some bizarre reason, unlocking your cell phone so that it can be used on more than one carrier. Don't ask me why that qualifies as copyright protection, but it does. Now, the Librarian of Congress issues 3-year exemptions from the DMCA, and for, I think it was 2010 through 2016, I'm sorry, that is definitely wrong. 2006 to 2012, they issued that exemption for cell phone unlocking. But the problem with this process is every 3 years you need to reapply and start all over again. And the latest round, the Librarian of Congress turned us down on this one and said, no, cell phone unlocking is now illegal. If you don't have the permission of your carrier, you cannot unlock your own phone. There was much lobbying. There was a White House petition, and it received a lot of feedback, 114,000 petitioners in the 30-day window to get a response from the White House. Congress has put together a bill that undoes the Librarian of Congress's latest decision, makes unlocking legal, both for individuals and in bulk, which was in doubt there for a little while, but resellers will also be able to unlock phones in large numbers. And the president is behind it and is planning on signing the bill. In fact, may already have signed it at this point. The one downside is apparently the new bill only allows for 3 years again. So while the Librarian of Congress didn't do permanent damage, Congress didn't issue a permanent fix. So we have 3 years to get this extended, but at least for right now, you got that AT&T phone or T-Mobile phone you want to take somewhere else, go get it unlocked. You got a Verizon phone or Sprint phone, you have CDMA, sorry, you're probably still stuck right where you are, even if you get the phone unlocked. But at least you'll be able to travel internationally or something like that.
Yeah, but it's, if I'm not mistaken, it was more of an effect of the Librarian of Congress not acting and doing something inactive than actually doing something active, correct?
Well, there was a petition before him, and he turned it down. So,
oh, okay.
You know, inaction would have resulted in the exact same thing, but there's just, it's either nobody applies or the Librarian of Congress turns down the petition.
All right,
They didn't specifically block cell phones, but they had to specifically issue an exemption or it just wasn't going to happen.
Okay.
Now, Amazon did something interesting last week. They opened up a Netflix-like service for book reading. You get, for Kindle Unlimited, $9.99 a month. You get unlimited books from thousands of titles, and they're also giving you a free month of Audible to go with it when you sign up. Now, $9.99 a month sounds like a great deal to me. If you read more than one book a month, you're probably saving money on this. The downside is that while Amazon was able to tout a lot of big titles for the launch, what they did not quite make as public is that they have none of the big 5 publishers on board with this one. Which means that while there may be some specific books that are popular that are included, the vast majority of books you want to read not going to be available on this one. So it's an interesting idea. I love it. The publishers hate it. I don't think it's got any traction. I don't think this is going anywhere.
As somebody who's finally reading it, thanks to you, just a question, is the Zahn trilogy on the list, or do you not know that?
I don't know. I don't know specifics.
But if that's not on, it's not worth it. As somebody who finally got the chance to read them.
So, now in other Amazon news, lately every time Amazon comes up, we've been talking about, how they're basically turning into a monopoly that is terrifying and dangerous. But this week, they did something funny. France is trying to counteract Amazon's enormous influence, and so they banned free delivery for online book orders, and they banned the 5% discount that is the apparently maximum discount that any bookseller in France is allowed to have to begin with. Online booksellers cannot include that 5% discount either. So they're trying to give the brick and mortar stores a leg up. You have to charge for delivery, so going to brick and mortar store is cheaper that way, and brick and mortar stores have the 5% discount, whereas the online retailers don't. That's a bit of a pain in the neck for French Amazon customers, but Amazon did find an interesting solution to at least the shipping problem. They no longer offer free shipping, they offer 1 cent shipping.
Yeah.
So it still made them a bit more expensive than they ordinarily would be, but they did get to thumb their nose at the French government over this one, so I'm in favor.
Why does it seem like Western Europe hates technology currently?
It's not so much that they hate technology, they just kind of don't understand that the open internet is going to be the thing that drives progress, not protectionism. First we had this banning delivery of free books, but I think the right to be forgotten story we're about to talk about is much more insidious. A few months ago, Google lost a case in court. I believe it was a French user, wanted articles about a bankruptcy they had gone through taken down off Google. They weren't saying they were false or libelous or anything like that. They just didn't want their name on the front page of Google to bring up all these terrible stories about their past. And European courts ruled that essentially, you're right, you have a right to be forgotten, and while these stories can remain published somewhere, Google and major search engines cannot present them in the results. And they required Google to set up a takedown system, and something like 100,000 people have applied to have their information taken down.
Right, because using a search engine to search for information, you do not want to find the information you're looking for.
Yeah, it's very, very strange. Uh, you know, it's it's essentially like saying we're not banning a book, we're just banning it from the card catalog, which in a lot of ways has the exact same effect of banning the book. Nobody's ever going to be able to find this information.
Well, I will say,
One of
I was going to
what's
say,
that?
banning a book might actually be less destructive because somehow when you ban a book, everybody knows exactly what you're banning and they find a way to read it. When you're
Right. This is
banning things just on such large scale, nobody's going to know what the hell's taken.
yeah, and this is banning the way to find the book, which
Yeah.
is subtle and insidious and far more effective, I think.
All right.
Uh, and in this case, a couple of the takedowns that have happened have been to links of uh, articles, like from real journalists. British journalists had cases taken down. I know, I think it was, trying to remember which case it was. I know one of the big financial collapses, someone who is
Oh, they
deeply
had
involved in
Goldman
that.
Sachs. Yeah.
What's that? It was Goldman Sachs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Had his information taken down. He didn't want the financial collapse associated with his name
oh, I'm
anymore.
sorry, Merrill Lynch.
Oh, it was Merrill Lynch. That makes more sense.
Yes, Merrill Lynch
Uh,
and Stan O'Neill. Though I don't know if now our hangout's going to be taken down in Europe.
yeah. So Google has so far accepted about half of these petitions. Uh, we'll see how the European courts rule, whether they're taking down enough of them. But there's no coherent process for this. The courts just said that you have to take down things that are outdated or irrelevant, and then left it up to Google to figure out what outdated or irrelevant means. And they can end up back in court if they're not broad enough. And so they're using the shotgun method right now. Half of all requests are getting approved. And some serious journalism is being taken down that has every right to be up. And I don't think the global financial collapse is irrelevant to anyone yet. And yet somehow that information is getting taken down. So Google, I think, was very wise in this case. I think what they were trying to do was get the newspapers on their side, and I believe it was the BBC is bringing this case to court from the opposite end of the spectrum. So maybe they'll get the European Commission to back down.
Yeah, I mean, Europe, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
especially since Europe has decided to broaden this regulation. As soon as this ruling came out, basically everyone's response was, Google in Europe is not the same as Google in America, right? You're only getting them to take down the results in Europe. And so they've been listening to that criticism of this ruling, and it looks like they're trying to get Google to take down worldwide, which is an enormous overreach. I don't know how they think they're going to be able to affect free speech in America.
Yeah, let's censor American internet. Yay.
Yeah. And, I mean, it's a colossal invasion of free speech rules in the United States. This rule would never fly here.
No.
So the only question is, do these European countries have enough financial power against Google to force them to take down everywhere, or fear losing business in Europe? If they get faced with fines, Google does have the alternative of just not doing business in Europe anymore. It's a possibility. They did it in China. They could do it in Europe. But it would be a huge hit for them. So the question is, how big a fight is this worth having to them?
Yeah. I mean, you want to watch, as somebody who uses it, but do you want to watch Bing take over Europe?
While I'm not a Bing fan, I'm an absolute Google fanboy. That being said, I think competition makes everyone better, and Google doesn't really have any right now. So give Bing a little traction, and maybe Google will turn into a better service.
Yeah.
You never know.
Hey, I actually freely admit I use Bing more than Google.
Yeah.
But that's also because of the rewards.
I tried the reward thing for a little while, but it meant I had to use Bing, and so that didn't last. Honestly, the big problem was that it doesn't work with Google Now on my phone, and so that was the end of that.
Ah, that could
Uh,
be an issue.
Now, in another amusing European court case, a French blogger got dinged for writing negative reviews about a restaurant. Turns out her story was the most prevalent result when you search for this particular restaurant. It was a awful review, really, really harsh. Let's see, the title was, let's see, The Place to Avoid in Cap Ferret, Il Giardino. It was actually telling you in the title, stay away from this place.
Yeah.
Very scathing review. And since it was showing up so high in the search results for this particular restaurant, it was affecting their business severely. And so a French court has ordered this blogger to pay a fine and change the title. Not take down the review. Change the title so it doesn't show up so high in Google search results.
By the way, just to point out, the fine, not only is it 1,500 pounds in damages, it's also 1,000 pounds to cover the court costs of the complaint of the restaurant. So,
I mean,
yay.
This is insane to me that you actually are getting someone, saying to someone, you have every right to say what you said and make it public. What you don't have a right to do is have good SEO. You can't have your search engine results end up being good if you're critical of someone. If nobody sees what you wrote, it doesn't matter that it was public. But if a lot of people are seeing it, well, we can't have that.
Right, because as people that have done some research into it, other people's reviews of this place have also been very bad, but they weren't as influential.
Yeah, which is, I mean, I know Europeans have very different standards of free speech, but you're effective, therefore you can't talk, seems like the opposite of the way you would want that thing to work. As far as I'm concerned, the more effective your speech power is, the more important it is that it be protected. But that's me.
And another reason why I will never live in Europe.
Yeah. Now, our next story is, we're actually having a technical story finally. Project Volta. For those of you who haven't heard of this, so again, everyone but me, if you were following into the insanely long Google I/O keynote, you heard in the description of Android L, the next version of Android coming later this year, the big optimization project this time was called Project Volta. It was designed to improve Android battery life. Making sure apps don't run in the background that drain your battery, make the whole system more efficient and smoother so that you get more battery life out of it. Ars Technica did a really intense battery test on the Android L release. Now, this is still a developer preview. It is, I can tell you from experience, very unstable. There are apps that don't work with it. If you rely on Dropbox, you cannot use this because no Dropbox app, including Mailbox, which I use as my mail client, will log in using the L preview. It is not meant as a consumer product yet. Do not try it unless you are a developer or just want to see what's coming. Do not put it on your day-to-day phone for any sort of long-term period. You will not be happy yet. Give them a few months and you'll be very happy. But if you have a spare Nexus 5 lying around like Ars Technica did, you could take a single phone, charge it up, load it up with the latest build of Android 4.4, run a battery test, and then wipe the phone, install the L preview, and run the exact same battery test on the exact same phone, and find out that Project Volta is already delivering 25% better battery life on the same Android device. 25% increases. That is insane for a software optimization to be able to do to any device. That is incredibly impressive.
I would like a couple of more hours between having to run and find a charger on my phone at this point.
Yeah. And this is when it's not finished yet, and when developers haven't had a chance to take advantage of the APIs. Because Project Volta is going to give developers ways to tie in to make their apps work better and use less battery life also. So we could be seeing a world of difference in Android battery life. This is one of the biggest places Android was behind iOS, so it is going to be very exciting to see.
Wait, iOS did something better with the battery than Android?
For a given battery capacity, iPhones definitely have better battery life. It's just they're smaller phones, so they have smaller batteries in them. But
is Volta in beta even, or is it still in alpha?
Volta is only in the developer preview. That's all it is. The L developer preview, which from the sounds of it, we're not even getting any updates to until the official release. So the L preview is really just there for developers to test their apps against.
So it's not ready for prime time?
No, not even close. I tried. I really did. I am so excited for L. I love the way it looks. I love some of the features it's bringing. I wanted to use it as my daily driver. It's not possible. I couldn't last more than 2 hours with it before I had to go back.
All right. No, because I'm looking at a graph somebody was running with it right now, and they got 36% more battery life on a Nexus 5, and I'm like, ooh, that would be nice.
Yeah. I mean, I have an Nexus 5. I would love to see those kind of battery increases. I can't use a phone running the L preview yet. It's not meant for daily use. Everybody who you talk to about this will tell you, don't put it on your daily driver. If you have a spare phone to put it on, go ahead. But you cannot work with it yet. It is a preview. It is not meant for consumers. Big warning labels all over this one. Wait until it's ready.
Well, that sounds like good advice.
Yeah. I should say that the Mac OS X 10.10 preview is also out at the moment, and the same warning label applies. Not on your primary machine. Now, that one is a lot closer to release, and so there are people who are using it as their daily drivers, but be cautious.
Right.
If you're a Mac person and you want to try out what's coming, just be careful. Make sure you have a backup. Make sure you have a separate partition for this thing so that you can switch to your regular operating system if you run into trouble. Previews are just that. They're previews. They're not meant for you to be working in, and you can get into so much trouble if you think that you can just use this and then not have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Another amusing story going through the courts right now. Goldman Sachs is suing Google to unsend an email. Someone at Goldman accidentally sent confidential client information instead of to a .gs address to a @gmail.com address.
Right.
The idea that they use an email system where that kind of mistake is possible is terrifying if they're sending confidential client information over it, but they obviously are. They sent to a Gmail user who, according to Google, did not open the email, and they blocked the email so it can't be opened, but they are also not unsending it. They're not deleting it. They are leaving it as is, and if they win the court case, this user will get to read whatever this email is.
I'm wondering, because with regards to snail mail, if somebody writes a letter and puts the wrong address on it, what are the laws regarding to the person who receives it? Or
as far as I know, there are no such laws. There's nothing requiring you to not read or send back confidential stuff accidentally sent to you. It's not classified. It's private. And things that are handed to you are no longer private.
Right. So if the person whose email address as well as had opened it, they would not be liable for anything, I would assume.
I seriously doubt it, especially since how would they know before opening it?
Right.
Now we have a couple of PSAs we're going to issue tonight. The first one is a warning from security researchers. When you wipe your Android phone, you are not really wiping your Android phone, it turns out. Data can be fairly easily recovered after using the built-in phone wipe on Android devices. This is very similar advice to what we've known about computer hard drives for many years. When you erase the data on a hard drive, all the computer does is erase the pointers to the data. The data itself is still there, and proper recovery tools can get it back. The only way to really erase the data is to write new data over it. Now that slows down the computer too much, so nobody does that unless you have some sort of highly secure information and you're using a file shredder on it. But fact of the matter is, most of the time when you wipe a hard drive, you're still leaving all the data there. You just made it slightly more complicated to access. The assumption was that Android devices, when you did the factory reset, would actually wipe the data. They do not. All they do is remove the pointers.
The question is now doing a full wipe where you would rewrite the data. As you explained, it does take a lot more time. So
right.
The fact that the reset is as fast as it is, how did nobody realize that, hey, they weren't fully wiping your data till now?
Well, the factory reset isn't really that fast. It takes a few minutes to run, and you don't know what's going on behind the scenes while that's happening. So it wasn't so clear. Also, Apple has a much better solution to this. They didn't in the early days, but these days they do. They encrypt the data on the phone. And if you encrypt the data on the phone, then deleting the pointers is pretty much all you need to do because, let's face it, it's gibberish unless you have the security key. So deleting the pointers, just clears the space for reuse. And if somebody gets the phone and restores that gibberish, they still don't have your password. They can't get your information.
I will say, as somebody who has reset a couple of devices in their ownership, one device was almost completely filled with, I was almost out of memory on one, and one was almost empty. The reset's almost the exact same time, though.
Yeah, so that should have been a red flag, and it's probably what pointed Avast in the direction to find this. But for future reference for all of our listeners, if you have an Android device and you want to factory reset it and then sell it or anything like that, the procedure is this. First, encrypt the phone. You go to your settings, go to security, and there's an option to encrypt all the data on the phone. It'll take a little while to do, but after that, you'll have that same situation as Apple. The data on the phone is gibberish without your password. Once it's encrypted, you can do a factory reset, and then the data on there will still be recoverable, but it won't be usable. Someone will get your phone, they'll see, oh, there's all these ones and zeros with no pointers. I can recover the ones and zeros, only to find out that it's an encrypted mess that they will never, ever be able to access.
Unless your password is password.
Yes, unless your password is password.
Then again,
then it might be a little easier.
If your password is password, you probably don't know how to encrypt your phone, even if there's a button that says encryption.
Hey, I just told you how. So
they could not follow your instructions there, as somebody who has tried to explain that to people that use password as password.
That is true. This is my life in the IT world. A lot of people use password as password.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a little scary. So, Avast managed to uncover a lot of personal information on some phones that they picked up, naked pictures and the like of people, an alarming number of naked selfies on these phones that they picked at random. It says some scary things about the people out there that of random sampling can get this much. But yeah, if you keep personal data on your phone, and we all do, even if we think we don't, encrypt it. Always encrypt your stuff. It's the better way to go.
And people love their junk, I guess.
My second favorite story of the night, the German committee looking into the NSA leaks from Edward Snowden and what implications it has for Germany, including spying on the German chancellor's phone calls, etc., are looking to avoid being spied on by the NSA while they do their work. And they are thinking of shifting to typewriters. They are so concerned that the NSA will find out what they are finding out about the NSA that they are not letting any of the information be digitized. They are going to have it on typewriters, printed out, which seems bizarre to me because much of this information will be public record when they're done. But,
Yeah.
you know, if I was looking into the NSA, I'd be a little paranoid also. So
I
let's
mean,
hear it for them.
as somebody who has used a typewriter recently, because the computer they were using was so slow, it was faster to go and use a typewriter, they're still insanely annoying.
Yeah. Speaking of insanely annoying, someone decided to be insanely annoying to the NSA. As a protest, there's an artist who recorded a mixtape, encrypted it thoroughly, put it on an SD card, and mailed it to the NSA. He's hoping they'll never get to listen to it. Secure encryption is virtually impossible to break in any reasonable amount of time without massive resources, but the NSA has been storing all encrypted communications they run across on the theory that if you're hiding your information, you must have something to hide, and in the hopes that someday they will have the resources to crack that encryption. So this artist is adding one more little bit to the pile, which I find hilarious. A mixtape. That's what they're going to find if they ever manage to crack this thing.
Yes, because people don't want to hide things because they just want it private.
Yes. The NSA doesn't quite understand that theory. That's been an ongoing conversation ever since the Snowden leaks happened.
Yeah.
And in fact, it turns out the NSA has been looking into all sorts of users who look at anything privacy related. If you've researched Tor at any time in the past, there's a very likely chance you're on list from the NSA. There are also people who look into Tails, a secure operating system. The information the NSA is looking at here is people who want to take privacy on the internet seriously. And if you're looking at Tor and you're looking at Tails, you're probably looking at VPNs and encryption software and other security-related applications.
Yeah.
So basically, I'm on this list, and since I'm talking to you about Tails and Tor and all these other things, you could be too.
Well, I might have Googled or Binged, as the case may be, the letters NSA before, and that probably also put me on the list.
Yeah. I'm sure TrueCrypt is not their favorite thing in the world, although it might be now that they've shut the project down, but we already talked about that story another time.
I mean, you've never had the whole fun conversation with the guy listening in on your phone conversation?
I would love to do that sometime.
Oh, me and some friends have had maybe 20, 30-minute conversations with the guy. He never answers.
That is amusing.
Yeah.
In other news, not related to security, some of the giants of the internet today are taking a serious stance on net neutrality. Google, Netflix, and Facebook are all asking the FCC to look into interconnection fees, like the one that Netflix paid to Verizon and Comcast. They want to make sure that they can get their traffic through to their customers without interference by the local ISPs.
Mm-hmm.
This seems eminently reasonable to me. They want to make sure that the congestion is, if it's happening, that it's real and that it's not a deliberate act in order to extort fees from major web presence companies.
Yeah. Every time I hear more about this, it's just like they're trying to get paid from both ends, and it's getting ridiculous.
Yeah. My favorite story I heard today, actually. I didn't get a chance to add this to the show notes, but apparently Comcast and Time Warner and a few other ISPs have approached the FCC and said that you shouldn't worry about us blocking traffic and charging for the fast lane. You should worry about Google and Netflix and Facebook charging us to allow them on our network to get to our customers. That's right. Your ISP is worried that Google will violate net neutrality and they won't be able to get Google. They're basically saying, Google, pay us, but we don't want you to be able to demand payment from us.
It's an interesting argument, though, because you could, well, what was the chart? Like 50% of peak internet usage is Netflix?
Yeah.
If there was actual competition in broadband, which there isn't, obviously, but
Right.
if there was, Netflix could have some serious sway if they said, hey, we're not supporting this broadband company, we're supporting the other. The issue is that there isn't competition, so screw that idea.
Right. But once again, you know what the answer to this is? Decent net neutrality laws, aside from competition, which we need, but decent net neutrality regulations. So these are companies that are saying you need to let us have fast lanes because it's okay if we violate net neutrality, but don't let those guys violate net neutrality. They're the dangerous ones.
I will say, I actually don't have a huge problem with no competition. I have more of a problem classify them as utility without competition. Because just like utilities, they're very heavily they're regulated the right way for the most part.
See, they're not classified as utilities, though.
No, I said if you have them classified as a utility, I have no problem with no competition. Because then it would be just like the electric company. They can't, I mean, yes, there are points where the, well, I guess they do rolling brownouts in Queens.
Yeah,
so
I was going to say, you live in New York and you think a regulated monopoly for electricity works well? Seriously? The only place it can work worse is if you were on Long Island, where I grew up.
Yeah, but Con Ed's not. I mean, there are problems. I'm not going to argue. But the infrastructure to recreate another utility, electrical utility, is impossible. You can't build.
Right, which is why we tolerate it with electrical utilities. But we could use the same system we have right now for electrical utilities for internet, where you have one provider regulated and providing the lines, and another provider providing the service. The city could put in the lines itself or pay any of these companies to do it, and then let everyone use the lines. And then we'd have real competition on this subject, just like we do for power supply. In fact, it would probably be far more effective than for power supply.
Yeah. By the way, I know you spoke about it a couple of podcasts ago, but the 1 gig solution, has there been any movement on that?
Oh, that's been going on for years. There won't be movement on that for a very, very long time, if ever.
Oh, yeah.
Right now, we're fighting over whether or not municipal Wi-Fi setups are legal.
Wait, how would they be illegal?
There are some 31 states that have been convinced to pass laws banning municipal Wi-Fi. And
no, I'm not talking. Yeah, no, I understand if there's a specific law written, like where they screwed up. What was it? Philadelphia tried to do municipal Wi-Fi.
Yeah, they didn't screw up so much as we're the host of Comcast.
Yeah.
You know, Comcast is stationed there, and so there's very, very little chance.
It's like they needed to keep the jobs.
Yeah.
Sort of like, I don't know if you saw John Oliver this week, but his discussion on why silos are not shut down.
Yeah, I always like John Oliver these days.
Oh, yeah. Cool. Anyway.
Okay. Let's see. I believe we had one more story.
Fake ID?
Yes. One more PSA for all of our users. If you use an Android device, with anything from version 2.1 to 4.3, which is a lot of them.
Which is 4.3 again?
The last jelly bean.
So, oh yay, not me anymore.
Yeah, I said the same thing. If you're in that range, be cautious of apps from unknown sources. This is a vulnerability that does not exist if you only use apps in the Play Store, but if you install third-party apps, there's a flaw, and apps can impersonate other apps, and someone malicious can impersonate a legit app. So, for instance, someone could impersonate your Google Wallet and get all your credit card information, things like that. So, if you're in that range, don't install from unknown sources.
Has Google been working on a fix?
Well, yeah, that's why the flaw isn't in 4.4.
I understand, but can they patch the security on the older devices, or is it too late for them?
Well, here's the problem, is that Google can patch whatever they want, and then carriers have to let manufacturers push updates to the phone.
Oh,
This
right,
is one of the big reasons I like sticking to Nexus devices, because I get updates from Google in a timely manner. You want a security update on your Froyo phone? Forget it. It's never going to happen.
I got the Galaxy series, so I know how long it could take a update to get through.
Yeah, so 6 months after they push out an update, you'll get the update.
Yeah. Well, thank God I don't have 4.3 anymore.
Yes, it is good. So, I believe that was our last story for the night. Alan, where can we find you on the web?
Alan Weinberg on Facebook, Packers at Packers4 on Twitter, no vowels.
Okay, and you can find me at Yehoni, Y-E-H-O-N-I, or on Google+, I'm plus Yoni Gross. Please subscribe to our show on iTunes and leave a review if you enjoyed it. You can also subscribe via RSS or the YouTube channel. We'll be back next week bringing you what's exciting in the world of tech. See you next time.
Bye.
Oh, we got the Aton salute even without him.
Oh, yay.